In the 1980s, two trucks became more famous than the actors who drove them. One could launch itself off cliffs and land like it was nothing. The other didn't bother with theatrics. It just smashed through whatever stood in its way. We're diving into the rivalry that still got collectors fighting over which machine truly defined an era. The Fall Guys GMC K2500 versus Simon & Simon's Dodge Macho Power Wagon. This isn't just about horsepower or suspension. It's about two completely opposite philosophies crashing head-on. One truck was Hollywood's golden child, polished, modified, and engineered to perform impossible stunts that made audiences gasp. The other was a blue-collar warrior, dented, scarred, and proud of every battle wound it earned on camera. 40 years later, the debate hasn't cooled down one bit. In fact, with a massive 2024 movie reboot and auction prices hitting six figures, this rivalry just got a whole lot more interesting. And here's what nobody talks about. The truck that won over audiences might not be the one you'd actually want in your driveway. So which truck deserves the crown? Let's settle this once and for all. When The Fall Guy premiered in 1981, viewers weren't just introduced to a show about a stuntman who moonlighted as a bounty hunter. They met a truck that would become more recognizable than most of the criminals Colt Seavers chased down. That GMC K2500, with its two-tone brown and tan paint job, chrome roll bar, and aggressive stance, looked like it rolled straight out of every kid's fantasy. Lee Majors played Colt Seavers with the kind of swagger that made jumping off buildings look easy. But his real co-star? That lifted GMC that somehow managed to fly through the air week after week, landing with a confidence that defied every law of physics. The truck had everything. Brush guards, KC lights, a lift kit that screamed attitude, and that unmistakable 4x4 presence that made it look ready for action even when it was parked. The stunts were absolutely insane for network television. This truck jumped over rivers, crashed through trailers, soared off ramps, and always stuck the landing. Audiences ate it up. Every week, millions tuned in just to see what impossible feat this machine would pull off next. But here's the part most fans never knew. Those death-defying jumps weren't performed by the pristine hero truck you saw in close-ups. The production team used multiple heavily modified stunt rigs, stripped down, reinforced with custom chassis work, and rebuilt after nearly every major stunt. Stunt coordinator Mickey Gilbert basically created disposable monsters designed to be destroyed. In the early seasons, they went through trucks like crazy, smashing them to pieces and moving on to the next one. The only truck that survived it all? A mid-engine beast that Kevin Webb eventually restored and still owns today. That machine is worth more than most people's houses, a genuine piece of television history that somehow made it through the chaos. Fast forward to 2024, and Hollywood decided to bring The Fall Guy back. Ryan Gosling stepped into Lee Majors' boots for a big-budget remake that cost somewhere between $125 and $150 million to make. The movie broke a world record with an 8.5 cannon roll stunt, and critics loved it. Audiences loved it too, at least the ones who actually showed up. Here's the twist nobody saw coming. The movie bombed. Despite glowing reviews and that undeniable Gosling charm, it only pulled in about $181 million worldwide, leaving the studio nursing a $50 million loss. Theories flew around about why original IP struggles in the streaming era, but the real shock was that even a legendary truck couldn't save it at the box office. The controversy didn't help either. A joke referencing Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's messy legal battle got some serious backlash online, stirring up drama the movie didn't need. Still, Lee Majors and Heather Thomas showed up for a mid-credits cameo, passing the torch to a new generation even if that generation didn't pack the theaters. But here's what's wild. Despite the movie's financial stumble, the truck's legend only grew stronger. A promotional GMC replica signed by Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt sold at auction for $90,000 in 2025. Another replica went for $99,000 at Barrett-Jackson back in 2022. These aren't even original stunt trucks, just well-built tributes, and they're fetching luxury car prices. That's the power of Hollywood magic. Even when reality hits hard, the fantasy keeps selling. While the Fall Guys GMC was busy defying gravity, another truck was earning respect the old-fashioned way, by taking a beating and asking for more. Rick Simon's 1979 Dodge Macho Power Wagon from Simon & Simon wasn't trying to win beauty contests. It was trying to survive another day on the job, and it showed. Gerald McRaney played Rick Simon, an ex-Marine turned private investigator who didn't have time for Hollywood nonsense. His truck matched that energy perfectly. That Sierra red paint job was covered in scratches and dents that weren't added by a prop department. They were earned during actual filming. The massive steel bumper up front wasn't for show either. It was a battering ram that plowed through barriers, fences, and anything else foolish enough to get in the way. The Dodge Macho Power Wagon was part of a special package Dodge marketed under their Adult Toys campaign. Yeah, they really called it that. The Macho package included bold graphics, upgraded suspension, and an attitude that said this truck wasn't built for weekend warriors. It was built for people who actually used their vehicles the way trucks were meant to be used. Hard, rough, and without apology. What made Simon & Simon's approach different was the commitment to reality. There were no stunt doubles for the truck. No hidden modifications or reinforced frames designed to absorb impossible impacts. When that Dodge crashed through something on camera, it really crashed through it. The damage was real, the consequences were real, and viewers could feel the difference. That authenticity resonated with a specific type of fan, the ones who worked with their hands, who knew what a truck was supposed to do beyond looking good in a parking lot. They saw themselves in Rick Simon and his beat-up Power Wagon. It wasn't a fantasy machine. It was the kind of truck that could actually sit in your driveway, mud-caked and reliable, ready for whatever came next. The show ran from 1981 to 1989, and throughout those 8 seasons, the Dodge remained a constant, dependable presence. Multiple trucks were actually used during production, both 1979 and 1980 models, but they all shared that same rugged, no-nonsense character. The last known sighting of one of the original trucks was on Universal Studios' backlot, quietly sitting there like a retired soldier who'd seen too much action to brag about it anymore. Unlike the GMC, the Dodge didn't spawn a massive collector market. There are no 6-figure auctions or celebrity-signed replicas commanding insane prices, but that doesn't mean it's forgotten. Off-road enthusiasts, retro TV fans, and people who value substance over flash still hunt for these trucks, appreciating them for what they represent. Honest toughness in a world obsessed with spectacle. The Power Wagon didn't need to fly. It just needed to get the job done every single time, and it did. Strip away the chrome and paint, and you'll find that these two trucks represented something much deeper than automotive preferences. They were symbols of two competing visions of American identity in the 1980s, and the divide between them still echoes today. The Fall Guys GMC was the American dream on 4 wheels. It promised that with enough creativity, determination, and movie magic, you could defy gravity itself. This was the truck that told viewers anything was possible if you were bold enough to try. It represented aspiration, the idea that ordinary people could become extraordinary through sheer audacity. Kids plastered posters of that GMC on their bedroom walls because it embodied the fantasy that life could be an endless adventure where you always stuck the landing. The Dodge Power Wagon represented the American reality. It didn't promise miracles or impossible stunts. It promised something arguably more valuable: reliability, toughness, and the dignity of honest work. This was the truck that dads nodded at approvingly, recognizing a machine that understood what vehicles were actually for. It spoke to people who'd earned every possession through sweat and persistence, who valued substance over style and function over flash. That cultural split influenced automotive marketing for decades. Truck commercials started emphasizing either extreme capability bordering on fantasy or rugged dependability for real-world jobs. The language, the imagery, the entire approach to selling trucks traces back to this era, when television proved that vehicles could have personalities as distinct as any human character. The debate still rages in collector circles, online forums, and anywhere gearheads gather to argue about what makes a vehicle legendary. Some insist that the GMC's cultural impact and auction prices prove its superiority. Others counter that the Dodge's authenticity and working-class credibility make it the true hero. Neither side is wrong. They're just valuing different things. What's fascinating is how these trucks became litmus tests for personality types. Are you someone who gravitates toward spectacular moments and big swings? Or do you prefer steady reliability and earned respect? Your answer to the GMC versus Dodge question reveals more about your worldview than you might realize. Both trucks tapped into fundamental American myths: the dreamer and the worker, the showman and the craftsman, Hollywood and Main Street. The fact that both could exist simultaneously on television screens said something optimistic about the culture. There was room for multiple versions of heroism, each valid in its own way. 40 years later, that message still resonates. We still need both the dreamers who push boundaries and the workers who keep everything running. We still need trucks that make us believe in the impossible, and trucks that show up reliably every single day. The GMC and the Dodge proved that television could celebrate both, even if fans would spend the next 4 decades arguing about which one did it better. After examining every angle, diving into the history, following the auction prices, and tracking their cultural impact, we're right back where we started. There is no definitive answer, and that's exactly what makes this rivalry so endlessly fascinating. The GMC K2500 captured imaginations. It made people believe trucks could fly, that Hollywood magic was real, and that life could be one spectacular stunt after another. Its auction prices prove that fantasy still sells, that people will pay six figures to own a piece of that impossible dream. The 2024 movie's struggles don't diminish the original's legend. They actually highlight how rare it is for anything to achieve that kind of lasting impact. The Dodge Macho Power Wagon earned respect the hard way. It proved that toughness doesn't need validation, that authenticity speaks louder than spectacle, and that sometimes the most memorable heroes are the ones who show up every day and do the work without asking for applause. Its smaller collector market doesn't mean it's less valuable. It means it appeals to people who measure worth differently. Both trucks became legendary in completely different ways, and both have earned their place in television history. The fact that fans still debate them 40 years later says everything about their cultural staying power. These weren't just props or product placements. They were characters that reflected two different but equally valid approaches to life. The 2024 movie proved the debate isn't dead, it's just evolved. New generations are discovering these trucks through different media, forming their own opinions, and keeping the rivalry alive. That's the ultimate tribute. Relevance across decades, the ability to spark passionate discussions regardless of when someone first encountered them. So which truck would you choose for your driveway? The high-flying Hollywood star that promises adventure and excitement at every turn? Or the rugged, unstoppable workhorse that guarantees reliability and honest toughness? Your answer reveals whether you chase dreams or respect the grind, whether you value spectacle or substance, whether you're drawn to fantasy or reality. The beautiful thing is that both choices are right. The GMC and the Dodge proved that television, and life, has room for multiple kinds of heroes. We need the dreamers pushing boundaries and the workers keeping everything running. We need trucks that make us believe in the impossible, and trucks that show up dependably when called. This rivalry will outlive everyone who watched these shows in their original run. It'll continue evolving as new builders create new replicas, as auction houses sell them to new collectors, and as people discover the original episodes through streaming platforms. The debate is far from over. It's just getting started for another generation. These weren't just trucks. They were time capsules of what 1980s America valued, reflections of competing dreams, and proof that sometimes the best stories have no clear winner, just two legends going head-to-head for eternity. Drop your choice in the comments. GMC or Dodge, Hollywood flash or blue-collar muscle. The debate is yours to continue, because when it comes to iconic television trucks, the argument never really ends. It just finds new voices to keep it alive.